Okay, welcome back. And I'd like to apologize for the length of these lectures for this particular unit. I just had a lot of historical and art historical stuff I wanted to cover in this unit too. So it's you know almost twice the length of most of the other units. But I did want to, in this particular lecture, continue from what we were talking about in terms of ancient Egypt and ancient Mesopotamia, and start talking about the transition from that world into the world of classical Greece. And so a lot of people have different names for this kind of time period. I'm using in this particular essay the term the Axial Age, but other people like to call this period the Archaic Age, as sort of a period between the truly ancient and the classical. And this period is a period dominated by empires. So we're going to be talking about the Assyrian Empire first, and then the Neo-Babylonians. And then in part 2 of this lecture, we'll then get to the Persians. And this is a period of time where the main big civilizations, such as Egypt and their powerful hold on other people, or also the main power of Mesopotamia, is slipping, and there are more and more competitors, people who are assimilating parts of these civilization ideas, but then interpreting them in new ways and expanding empires from different places. So, all right, let's move on. Okay, so like I said, we start with the Assyrians. The Assyrians were like the Akkadians. They were people from outside of Mesopotamia who then moved into the northern region of the Mesopotamia area, and then their empire expanded and became this giant-sized empire that conquered all of Mesopotamia and much of what is now modern-day Iraq, and even into parts of what would be maybe Lebanon and Syria. And the Assyrians were like the Akkadians in some ways, focused primarily on empire, on war, on conquest, and they seemed to be very, very good at it. They had a reputation of being ruthless, and many people have interpreted a lot of the artifacts that we have found as being indicating a people who were focused solely on war and on power. I do want to talk about this Lamassu figure here, just in part because it is so amazing. This particular one, I think, is the one at the Metropolitan Museum of Art. It might be the one. There's actually 3 main ones that are all quite impressive. One at the Metropolitan Museum of Art, one at the British Museum, and one at the Louvre. Maybe this is the one at the Louvre. Can't quite remember. But anyway, it is an amazing, gorgeous piece. And one thing that I just want to point out is a little side note. Notice the way the sculptor dealt with the side view and the front view. So from the front view, the 2 front legs are astride each other. You know, that they're not one stepping in front of the other, but they're placed side by side to each other. And then from the side view, it looks like this leg is forward and that leg is back. Anyway. Probably the most famous art from the Assyrians, and this is actually the Neo-Assyrian Empire. So there was an Assyrian Empire of about 200 years earlier, but then the Assyrians kind of regrouped and came back, and then the Neo-Assyrian Empire became quite a force in the ancient world. And this is from Ashurbanipal in the Palace of Ashurbanipal in Nineveh. And these are the lion hunting reliefs. We saw one on the previous page, I think. This is part of the lion hunting relief right there. And so this is a large multi-panel and length of rooms relief sculpture that's primarily focused. There's 2 sets. One that's primarily focused on the king Ashurbanipal as warrior defeating his enemies, and one focused on him as a hunter defeating lions. And you may not know, but like already by this time, the idea of hunting lions was a way of proving the kingly manliness of the king, right? That that lion hunting was considered the hunting that was only proper for a king. Um, and so, of course, he had a lot of help. So they hunted the lions in chariots, as we saw from the previous slide. He had lots of archers, but still, this relief creates the impression that the king was no slouch. That's a pretty scary thing to try to attempt. Whether, of course, he actually did it or not is another thing. But if someone saw that image, they would be pretty impressed. One of the things, there's out of this whole relief, there are a couple of images that are very interesting and different because the sculptors really focused on the death and the suffering of the lions, and perhaps the purpose of this was primarily just to make the king seem even more powerful and scary. But what's interesting is that this relief right here, along with a few others that are similar to it, this one is called the Dying Lioness. And this is actually a detail of a larger shot where she is dragging herself to her male mate who is already dying. She's obviously paralyzed, right? One of these arrows has gone through her spine, so her back legs can't work anymore, and she's dragging herself to her mate. And it is such an incredibly poignant and kind of sad image, and it's an interesting thing for us to ponder because when we see it from modern eyes, we see it in that way um, as an expression of sympathy, an expression of empathy towards the lioness's suffering. But it's quite possible that that is not how most of the people who came through, in this room saw it, or how the king saw it, and even how the artist who made it saw it. So the Assyrians did not last forever, and then the Babylonians uh, came back, and so then we have what we call the Neo-Babylonian Empire. They rebuilt the strength of their city and their empire, and one of the main works of art that we have from this period is this beautiful gate. Now, this is a reconstruction where, when the gate was found, pretty much all that was found was the individual pieces of tile, not it constructed together like that. But this gives you a good idea of what it must have looked like at the time. It must have been amazingly impressive. Okay, and that leads us to the Persian Empire, which is where I'm going to stop for now. And the last part of this lecture will be from Persians to the Greeks.